Hi everyone, Alex here from LFIS. Thank you for joining me in another episode of our weekly macro overview series. If you don't know already, myself and our fellow analysts took a break during exam period just to focus on academic studies, but we're back now and we'll be consistently delivering on our weekly macro overview series. Firstly, looking at Europe, US officials have warned that a Russian invasion of Ukraine could start within the coming days. This announcement comes as Russian military activity on the Ukrainian border increases. French President Macron has told allies that his meeting with President Putin earlier this week provided him with the assurance that there will be no deterioration or escalation in Russian-Ukrainian tensions. However, since then, US and Russian diplomats have been evacuated from Ukraine, and US officials have stated that the 1,700 troops sent to Poland would be used to evacuate US citizens in the event of an invasion. More news out of Europe includes Lagarde's signals to gradually shift ECB policy to tackle inflation. During a meeting with EU officials, Lagarde downplayed an acceleration in monetary tightening to tackle inflation. Instead, tightening would be gradual. Lagarde strongly believes that the current pace of monetary tightening would result in a gradual decline in the pace of inflation. Inflation defied expectations of a fall in January as prices rose by a record of 5.1% in the Eurozone area. The head of macro research at ING says Lagarde's comments aim to put the hawkish genie back in the bottle following her hawkish comments last week, which led to a sell-off in European bond markets. Also in Europe, European watchdogs have warned of financial risks posed by European property boom. Residential property prices rose by a record 9.1% in September 2021 for the year, the fastest pace since before the Great Financial Crisis, outstripping wage and GDP growth. Implications of rising borrowing costs often depress property prices. Property demand falls as individuals find it increasingly difficult to pay mortgage rates. Risks also loom for current mortgage holders subject to variable interest rates. Also now looking at America, firstly, US consumer sentiment hits 10-year lows as inflation fears mount. The consumer sentiment index fell by over 16% to 61.7. The decline was predominantly attributed to a fall in sentiment amongst households with over $100,000 in income. This is mainly due to a fall in asset prices in January. Experts believe this decline in sentiment could be indicative of further declines in stock market prices in the coming months. Further, as the US labor market tightens, inflationary pressures mount, and job growth remains slow, these are potential indicators suggesting that there's potential for an acceleration in monetary tightening, which could further depress short-term consumer sentiment. In South America, the Brazilian economy grew by 4.5% in 2021, beyond expectations of 4.4% by the country's central bank. The economy suffered severely due to several waves of the COVID-19 pandemic, but regained momentum in 2021 as cases fell and the economy reopened. Brazil's 2022 outlook predictions remain modest, as the country's economic ministry predicts GDP growth to be 2.1% for the year, while market estimates predict GDP growth to be 0.3%. Finally, in Asia, this week the Bank of Japan officials condemned China's zero-COVID policy, stating that it threatens global economic recovery. China's strict zero-COVID policies have significantly limited deaths in the country. Official figures set the death toll to less than 5,000. However, COVID measures, including regular targeted lockdowns, have enabled supply chain shortages, which has significantly contributed to inflationary pressures across the world. Though the Chinese economy grew by 8% in 2021, growth slowed in the second half of the year. The nation's economic slowdown has highlighted questions over the economic efficiency of a zero-COVID tolerance, given the economic implications of, for example, Evergrande, falling consumer confidence, and accelerated household debt in the country. Also, Australia has faced a similar reality with their strict pandemic measures. Aside from the severe social upheaval against the COVID-19 measures, the economic implications of closed borders reduced workforce migration into Australia by 380,000, which alone has cost the economy over $32 billion. The labour shortage has also contributed to wage inflation, and GDP is under threat from supply chain shortages originating from Southeast Asia. Finally, in India, the Royal Bank of India has set an ambitious target of 9% for India's GDP growth in fiscal year 2023. The nation has suffered tremendously from several COVID-19 waves, but recovered quickly as vaccination rates increase. Current figures of inflation in the country stand at 6%, as the central bank rate has increased to 4%. Like many other recovering economies, potential constraints on growth still exist. These may include COVID-19 outbreaks, inflation growth, supply chain shortages, and others. And there we have it. Thank you for joining me in another episode of our weekly macro overview series. I thought to open up some discussions in the comment section. I would introduce the questions of the week. So below, this week's questions are: how likely do you see it that Russia invades Ukraine? And in the event of an invasion, do you believe economic sanctions are sufficient enough to deter Putin or do justice for geopolitical relations? Do open up some discussions, put your opinions down, your views, your whatevers in the comment section, and myself or even a fellow viewer will also respond. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.